The smell of lilies was suffocating. Casablanca lilies, $4,000 worth to be exact. I knew the number because I had signed the check myself, my signature neat and confident, the way it always was when money and responsibility intersected. I knew the precise moment the organ would swell because I had coordinated the music cue sheet down to the second. I knew how the afternoon sun would filter through the stained glass of scent. John's Cathedral at exactly 2:47 p.m., because I had visited the venue 6 separate times at this hour to track the sun's trajectory. I am an event planner. It is what I do. I don't leave things to chance. I don't hope things will work out. I engineer outcomes. I script spontaneity. I organize chaos. The cathedral was perfect. Vaulted ceilings soaring high enough to humble even the loudest ego. Stone floors polished to a soft gleam. 240 guests seated exactly where they were meant to be. The seating chart memorized in my head like a second language. Senators on the left, judges on the right, donors near the aisle, difficult relatives buffered by charm and distance. Everything was aligned, everything was under control. So when the heavy oak doors at the back of the sanctuary banged open in the middle of Father Sullivan's homily, the sound cracked through the sacred stillness like a gunshot. The congregation reacted as one organism, a sharp intake of breath, heads snapping toward the sound, necks craning. A ripple of murmurs spread through the pews, low and confused, like a wave rolling through deep water. Even the organ faltered, the sustained note wobbling before dying altogether. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I was standing at the altar, hands folded around my bouquet of white roses, posture flawless, veil cascading down my back exactly as rehearsed. Instead of looking toward the disturbance, I looked straight ahead at the man facing me, Lucas, my fiancé. Or rather, the man playing the role of my fiancé. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost fascinating. One moment he was flushed with nervous excitement, the next he looked like old ash. His eyes widened, pupils dilated, fixed on something behind me with a focus that bordered on terror. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't breathing properly. A single bead of sweat broke free from his hairline and slid down his temple, tracing the sharp jawline I used to trace with my fingertips when we lay in bed together. His perfectly tailored Armani tuxedo, hand-selected by me, altered twice for precision, suddenly looked too tight around his neck, as if it were physically restraining him. "Lucas," I whispered, keeping my voice low, steady, playing my part. "What's happening?" His mouth opened. Closed, opened again. No sound came out. He looked like a fish pulled from water, gasping uselessly. Panic radiated off him in waves so strong, I could almost feel it across the space between us. Then I heard it. Click, clack, click, clack, slow, measured, deliberate, the sound of heels striking stone. Each step echoed through the cathedral, impossibly loud now that the organ had fallen silent. The rhythm was unhurried, confident, as if whoever was walking had nowhere else to be, and all the time in the world to arrive. I tightened my grip on my bouquet until my knuckles turned white. Then I turned, walking down the aisle. My aisle was a woman. She was young, maybe 24, beautiful in a way that felt unpolished and dangerous. Her hair was loosely styled, strands escaping as if she'd run her hands through it one too many times. Her makeup was smeared, mascara shadowing her cheeks, evidence of tears she hadn't fully wiped away. But her chin was lifted, her shoulders squared, and there was a defiance in the way she walked that made the room go quiet again. She was wearing a wedding dress, not a designer gown, not silk or lace or anything tailored with care. It was cheap white satin, the kind you'd find in a costume shop or a rushed online order. The fabric caught the light awkwardly, shiny and stiff. But it was unmistakably a wedding dress. That alone would have been enough to stop the room cold. But it wasn't what made the congregation gasp again. It was her belly, an enormous, undeniable baby bump strained against the white satin, rounding forward with the unmistakable shape of late pregnancy. 8 months, maybe more. There was no hiding it. No ambiguity. Life announcing itself loudly and publicly in the middle of my ceremony. She didn't look at the guests. She didn't look at the priest. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were locked on Lucas. She walked straight toward the altar, each step deliberate, heels clicking with purpose, like she was marching toward a destination she had memorized. 10 rows, 8, 6. The air in the cathedral felt thick, heavy, charged. You said, she shouted, her voice breaking through the silence and echoing off the vaulted ceilings, that you were leaving her. The words hung there, suspended, brutal. The silence that followed was dense enough to feel physical, pressing in on all of us at once. Lucas made a strangled sound, somewhere between a sob and a choke. "Chloe, wait," he said hoarsely. "I can explain." Explain. She stopped 10 feet from the altar and planted her feet. One hand came down to rest protectively on her stomach, fingers splayed, thumb rubbing slow, unconscious circles. "Explain this," she said, her voice shaking now, anger cracking through it. "You said the divorce was finalized weeks ago. You said today was just a business dinner. Business dinner. My wedding," I let my gaze drift, slow and controlled, to the front row. Lucas's mother, Eleanor, had gone pale, her hand flying to her chest as if her body were preparing to faint before her mind caught up. His father, Robert, sat rigid, jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. He looked like a man calculating consequences and crimes in equal measure. I looked back at Lucas. He was shaking. Not metaphorically, physically shaking, hands trembling at his sides, breath shallow and erratic. He reached for me, fingers brushing my glove. "Maddie," he stammered. "Maddie, baby, please. I don't even know who this is. I swear I don't," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The single word cut through the space between us with surgical precision. "Don't insult me, Lucas," I continued calmly. "Not today." I turned my full attention to the woman standing in the aisle. "Chloe," I said, tasting the name. Most brides would have been screaming by now, crying, running, collapsing into hysterics, or fleeing through a side door in humiliation. But I am not most brides. I am Madeline York. I plan events for a living, and chaos, once identified, is just another variable to manage. I glanced at the diamond, encrusted watch on my wrist, 2:49 p.m. "You're right on time, Chloe," I said evenly. "Actually, you're 2 minutes early. I accounted for traffic." Lucas stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "What?" he whispered. I smiled, not sweetly, not kindly. The kind of smile that makes people deeply, instinctively nervous. "You really thought," I said, my voice carrying easily thanks to the discreet lapel microphone clipped beneath my bouquet, "that you could bring your mistress to my wedding without me knowing?" "I didn't invite her," Lucas shouted, panic rising to hysteria. "I swear to God I didn't." "I know," I replied pleasantly. "I did." The words rippled through the cathedral like another shockwave. "I even paid for her Uber. My name is Madeline York." I was 34 years old, and for the last decade, I had been the premier event coordinator in Savannah, Georgia. People didn't come to me because they wanted something casual or charmingly imperfect. They came to me because I was obsessive. Because I noticed things other people missed. Because I understood that details weren't decorative, they were structural. God wasn't in the details, the devil was, and if you ignored them long enough, he showed up to collect. My life reflected that philosophy. I lived in a restored Victorian townhouse in the historic district, complete with original crown molding and a garden that had once been featured in Southern living. Every room was curated but livable, elegant without being cold. I drove a pristine white Lexus SUV that smelled faintly of lavender and money well spent. I had routines, systems, calendars, color. Coded months in advance. On the surface, it looked like control. In truth, it was comfort. Order kept the noise out, and I was marrying Lucas York. Lucas was 36, an architect with a firm jawline and an easy smile that opened doors before he even reached for the handle. He came from old money, the kind that didn't need to advertise itself because it had been circulating for generations. The York name carried weight across the South, country clubs, firms, boards. Lucas wore that privilege effortlessly. He knew how to shake hands, how to listen just long enough, how to make people feel chosen. He looked good in a suit. He looked better standing beside me. We met 6 years earlier at a charity auction I was organizing. He bid $5,000 on a vintage wine collection he didn't even want, just to impress me. It worked. He was charming without trying too hard, attentive without being needy. He followed up. He remembered things. He made me feel like the busiest woman in Savannah was still his priority. For 6 years, we were the golden couple. We hosted dinner parties where the wine was properly decanted and the playlists were curated to match the courses. We took ski trips to Aspen and summer weekends on the coast. We adopted a golden retriever named Cooper who looked like he belonged on a dog food bag and behaved like he knew it. Friends used words like solid and enviable when they talked about us. Vendors smiled when they saw our names together on contracts. It was perfect. It was also a facade. The wedding wasn't just a celebration of love. It was a transaction. A merger. A strategic move dressed in silk and florals. The Yorks were old money, and old money believed in appearances the way some people believed in religion. Lucas's father had made it clear when Lucas missed partnership at the firm the first time. Settle down, son. Clients trust a family man. Marriage wasn't a romantic milestone in that equation, it was a credential. So we planned accordingly. 18 months of planning, $65,000, a guest list that read like a donor registry and a political directory. 2 senators, a judge, half the historical society. I pulled favors I'd been saving for years. I secured the cathedral. I booked the chef from the Grey. I imported peonies from Holland because Lucas mentioned once, casually, that his grandmother loved them. I worried about the seating chart at 3 in the morning. I negotiated contracts until my voice went hoarse. I curated a playlist that traced our relationship from our first date to our engagement in Paris. I poured myself into that wedding. And I poured my mother into it too. My mother, Sarah, had died 4 years earlier. Ovarian cancer. Fast, brutal, merciless. She wasn't wealthy. She was a school librarian who clipped coupons and mended her own clothes. But she had a secret savings account she started the day I was born. Every birthday check, every tax refund, every spare dollar went into it. Before she died, she pressed the passbook into my hands. $25,000 to me, it was a fortune. To the Yorks, it wouldn't have covered the bar tab. This isn't for bills, she whispered, her fingers papery but strong around mine. This is for your joy. I want you to have the wedding I never had. I want you to feel like a princess for one day, so you remember you're a queen every day. I promised her I would. Every check I wrote from that account felt intimate. The dress she would have loved, a Vera Wang ball gown with layers of tulle that made me feel like I was floating. A string quartet because she loved Vivaldi, a lemon cake with raspberry filling because she used to talk about it like it was mythical. Each expense was a silent question. Is this beautiful enough? Is he good enough? I thought the answer was yes. 3 weeks before the wedding, the answer changed. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. Red flags rarely announce themselves. They whisper, they hide inside reasonable explanations. Lucas joined a gym, which was odd but not impossible. He started going on specific nights. He came home smelling of soap, not sweat. He changed his phone habits. He flipped it face down. He changed his passcode. Company policy, he said. Cybersecurity audit. I believed him because believing was easier than questioning. The real crack came with a receipt. I was cleaning out his car before his parents came into town, a habit born from both professionalism and control. The receipt was wedged between the passenger seat and the console. Walgreens, Tuesday, 8:47 p.m. Items purchased, Gatorade. Tylenol, prenatal vitamins. My hands went cold. We weren't trying. We'd agreed to wait. When I confronted him, he didn't panic. He didn't hesitate. He said they were for his pregnant assistant, Jessica, migraine, forgot her meds. He picked them up for her. She paid him back. It was plausible. I let it go. That night, lying beside him, staring at the ceiling, my mother's voice crept in softly. Jessica takes the bus. Why would you drive 20 minutes out of your way? I checked his laptop. I didn't need to hack anything. His iMessages were synced. Chloe, 7 months of messages, ultrasounds, promises, plans, lies layered on lies. He talked about me like an inconvenience, an obstacle, an ATM. He talked about my dead mother like a bargaining chip. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat on the kitchen floor, the glow of the screen lighting up a future that had never been real. And I did what I had always done best. I organized the chaos. I didn't confront Lucas, not that night, not the next morning. I closed his laptop carefully, wiped the screen where my fingerprints might have been, and put it back exactly where it had been. Then I went to bed and lay beside him while he slept, his arm draped over my waist like a claim he no longer had the right to make. He murmured, "Love you," in his sleep, the words automatic, meaningless muscle memory. I whispered it back into the dark, my voice steady, my face dry, my mind already moving pieces into place. The next morning I made coffee, his exactly the way he liked it. 2 sugars, splash of oat milk. I kissed him goodbye at the door and told him to have a good day on site. He said it was going to be a late night. I told him that was fine. I had a lot of planning to do. None of that was a lie. As soon as he left, I made a call, not to my best friend, not to my therapist. I called Rowan Vale. I'd met Rowan years earlier while coordinating a high-stakes corporate merger party. The CEO needed a background check on a potential partner fast, quiet, and airtight. Rowan had delivered in 12 hours. She looked more like a librarian than a private investigator, all soft cardigans and neutral tones, but there was something sharp behind her glasses. She charged $250 an hour, and she was worth every cent. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. I slid my phone across the table, screen lit with the messages I'd photographed the night before. I didn't dramatize. I didn't cry. I simply said, I need everything, who she is, where she lives, what she believes, and whether she knows about me. Rowan adjusted her glasses and nodded. Give me 24 hours. She only needed 12. That night, a Dropbox link appeared in my inbox. Subject line, Project York, Chloe Miller, 24, Customer Service Representative at a Tech Startup. Apartment in Pooler, Lease Co. Signed by Lucas York. Prenatal care records. Due date next month. A Pottery Barn Kids Registry under Chloe and Luke. Neutral tones, woodland theme. The kind of hopeful, curated future people build when they believe they're safe. Rowan's notes were clinical but damning. Subject appears to believe target is separated and pending divorce. Believes wife is emotionally unstable following mother's death. Believes target lives in guest room. Believes marriage ending amicably. I stared at the screen for a long time. Chloe wasn't a villain. She wasn't a seductress or a mastermind. She was young, pregnant, lied to with precision. She was living inside a story Lucas had written for her, the same way I once had. Different role, same script. I could have destroyed her, exposed her publicly, painted her as a homewrecker. People would have believed it, they always do. But she wasn't the one who stood at an altar with me. She wasn't the one who took my mother's money. She wasn't the one planning to walk away with a partnership and leave wreckage behind. She was collateral, so I called her. Her voice was bright when she answered, polite, unguarded. "Hello, is this Chloe?" I asked. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Madeleine York," I said, Lucas's wife. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. I think she finally whispered, "You have the wrong number." "No," I said gently. "We're getting married in 3 weeks." She started to cry. I didn't rush her. When she could breathe again, I told her where to meet me. Starbucks on Abercorn, 30 minutes. Bring the ultrasounds. She was already there when I arrived, clutching a water bottle with both hands like a lifeline. She looked smaller in person, softer, very pregnant, no makeup, hair pulled back hastily, fear radiated off her in waves. She started apologizing before I even sat down. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, he told me you were divorced. He showed me papers, a PDF." I said, "Probably well-designed. He's good with software." I pulled out my phone, dates, locations, lies laid side by side. Every memory mirrored, every excuse duplicated, golf trips, work emergencies, missed birthdays, leftover cake. Lemon raspberry custom order, $7 a slice, she cried. I didn't. He said you didn't want kids, she whispered. That you were too focused on your career. That one landed harder than the rest. I slid my iPad across the table and showed her the wedding website. The photos, the timeline, the date, October 14th, that's his conference, she said faintly. He said he had to be in Atlanta for 3 days. He does, I replied. The presentation is just different. She asked why I wasn't screaming, why I wasn't throwing my coffee, why I wasn't blaming her. Because you're not the problem, I said. You're the leverage. I told her the plan. Simple, theatrical, precise. She would stay quiet. She would let him believe his lies were holding. Then, on the day of the wedding, at exactly the right moment, she would arrive, wear white. I told her. It's a special occasion. After Starbucks, I had one more appointment. Alexander Moore, divorce attorney. Reputation lethal. Silk blouse, shark smile. She reviewed the prenup with interest, lingering on the infidelity clause. The partnership money, the joint account, the timing. You want to go through with the ceremony, she said. I want him to say I do, I replied. I want the marriage to be legal for 5 minutes. She smiled slowly. I'll have the papers ready. The next 3 weeks were a performance worthy of an award. I smiled. I played my role perfectly. Lucas grew more relaxed by the day, mistaking my calm for ignorance. Every night he texted Chloe. Every night she sent me screenshots. We had a group chat. Me, Chloe, Rowan. I moved my money quietly. Every dollar that was mine disappeared from the joint account. What remained was his. And his parents, the morning of the wedding, Lucas was pacing. Nervous, he said. Big day. I told him it would be memorable. I helped him with his cufflinks. I watched him leave. Then I texted Chloe. Game time. I put on my dress. My mother's dress. I looked in the mirror and searched not for glow, but for steel. And when the doors opened at 2:47 p.m., everything moved exactly as planned. The music swelled and the guests rose, a coordinated rustle of fabric and anticipation, faces turning toward the doors with rehearsed smiles. The church was perfect in the way expensive things often are, all ivory and soft gold, candles lining the aisle like obedient stars. I took my first step forward, bouquet steady in my hands, heart calm in a way that surprised even me. Every detail was familiar because I had chosen it, curated it, believed in it once. Lucas stood at the altar, handsome and tense, his smile flickering when our eyes met, relief passing over his face as though he had survived something unknowable. I walked slowly, letting the moment stretch. I could feel the weight of every gaze, the quiet reverence people reserve for weddings, as if love itself might shatter if handled too roughly. Somewhere in the front row, his mother dabbed her eyes. My father sat rigid, jaw tight. Friends leaned forward, already preparing to applaud. The officiant smiled at me as I reached the altar, whispering how beautiful I looked. I handed off my bouquet, folded my hands, and faced Lucas. Up close, I could see the faint tremor in his fingers, the way his jaw flexed. He mouthed, "You okay?" And I nodded, serene. The ceremony began. Words flowed around me like water: commitment, fidelity, honor. I watched Lucas as he listened, watched the way he nodded at the right moments, the practiced sincerity in his expression. He had always been good at this part, at knowing when to look moved, when to look solemn. When it was his turn to speak his vows, his voice wavered just enough to sound real. He talked about partnership, about building a life, about standing together through storms. I thought of hurricanes, of late nights, of phones lighting up in the dark. When it was my turn, I met his eyes and smiled. I promise honesty, I said, and felt the word vibrate through me. I promise loyalty. I promise to honor the truth even when it's difficult. His shoulders eased as if something inside him had unclenched. The officiant asked if anyone had reason why we should not be joined in marriage. There it was. The pause stretched, the way it always does. A formality no one expects to be answered. A few guests chuckled softly. Lucas exhaled, barely perceptible. Then the doors opened. The sound was small but unmistakable. The creak of wood against hinge, the sudden shift of attention like a current changing direction. Heads turned, confusion rippled. I didn't move. Chloe stepped inside. She wore a simple white dress, not bridal but unmistakable in color. The fabric stretched taut over her belly. One hand rested protectively against it. The other held a manila envelope. Her face was pale, eyes wide but steady. For a moment, she stood frozen, the weight of hundreds of eyes pinning her in place. Lucas turned. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost fascinating to watch. His mouth opened, then closed. His body leaned toward me instinctively, as if proximity might save him. "Madeline," he whispered, "what is this?" I turned to him slowly. "This," I said, loud enough to carry, "is the reason we're all here." A murmur rose, whispers cascading through the pews like falling dominoes. Chloe took a step forward, then another, her breathing measured, deliberate. Each footfall echoed. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling but audible. "I was told this was over. I was told you were free." His mother stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. "Lucas, what is happening?" He reached for my hand. I let him touch me, felt the sweat on his palm, the way his grip tightened. "Please," he said under his breath, "we can explain this later." "There is no later," I replied and gently pulled my hand away. I nodded to Chloe. She opened the envelope and removed the ultrasound images, holding them up with both hands. Black and white proof, irrefutable. A collective gasp swept the room. "I'm pregnant," she said, with his child. Time fractured. Voices overlapped. Someone laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Someone else swore. The officiant stepped back as if physically pushed. Lucas's father stared straight ahead, face unreadable. Lucas finally found his voice. "This is insane," he said, shaking his head. "She's lying. Madeline, you know me." I reached into the folds of my dress and pulled out my phone. "Do I asked and tapped the screen. Screenshots appeared on the large display behind us, meant for sentimental photo montages. Messages, dates, intimate words. Photos cropped carefully to exclude faces but not bodies. Hotel confirmations. Lease agreements, the Pottery Barn Kids Registry, Chloe's name, his. The room erupted. "This is a private matter," Lucas shouted, panic cracking through his composure. "This isn't the place for this. You made it the place," I said. "You just didn't expect an audience." I turned to the officiant. "We're still proceeding." Lucas stared at me, disbelief warring with terror. "What? I want this marriage," I said calmly. "Legally." Alexander Moore appeared at the side of the altar as if summoned, documents already in hand. She caught my eye and gave a slight nod. The officiant hesitated, then cleared his throat, looking between us, the crowd, the unfolding chaos. "Do you," he said uncertainly, "Lucas York, take Madeline?" "Yes." Lucas blurted, desperation overriding sense. "Yes, I do. And do you, Madeline?" "I do," I said. The words landed with a thud. By the power vested in me. "Wait," Lucas's mother cried. But it was too late. "You may kiss the bride." Lucas lunged toward me, relief flooding his face, already calculating, already planning his way out. I stepped back. "No," I said, "we're married. That's enough." Alexander moved forward smoothly, papers in hand, her voice cutting through the noise. "Lucas York, you've been served." He looked down at the documents, confusion flickering, then horror as recognition dawned. The infidelity clause, the financial penalties, the timing. 5 minutes of marriage, ironclad. Chloe's hand tightened over her belly. Lucas's knees buckled slightly. Somewhere behind us, someone began to cry. I took off my ring and placed it gently on the altar, next to the candles, next to the flowers that would wilt by morning. As I walked back down the aisle alone, the whispers followed me, louder now, less restrained, the sound of a narrative being rewritten in real time. And I felt lighter with every step, as if something essential had finally been released, as if the air itself had shifted, as if the storm had already passed and all that remained was the aftermath, the debris still falling, the sky not yet clear, but open enough to move forward, open enough to breathe, open enough to step into whatever came next without looking back at the man still standing at the altar, papers shaking in his hands. Surrounded by witnesses who would never forget what they had seen, who would carry this moment with them long after the candles burned out, after the flowers died, after the dress was packed away, after the story left the church and spilled into the world beyond the doors that closed softly behind me.